Hey guys, it's Mark with Life Adventure here. I'm here with Becky Cook. If you guys don't know, she is a Bigfoot author here in Idaho. She's also someone that has seen multiple Bigfoot over the time, and we're just gonna come back and forth and ask some questions about it. She was very nice to show me around today, places that she saw her Bigfoot by her house here in town. Also, we went up to the mountains to a place where she had seen them also. She'd also left fruits for them. They'd taken the fruit. And I'm going to camp there tonight with Rue, as you know. So we will see. Thank you first for doing this. We're going to start. First, everybody's asking about your Bigfoot stories. She's written 4 books and a children's book. She has interviewed over 100 people. She knows what she's talking about. We were talking about different things tonight, about correlations and who Bigfoot shows himself. And I know a lot of you, and I know for myself, I began thinking that Bigfoot was flesh and blood, that like a bear he appears, and now I've somewhat changed my theory with speaking with so many people that he has the ability to appear and disappear, whether it be through portals or things like that. So let's talk about, just give me a brief synopsis of who you are, and then we're going to go into your first time you saw Bigfoot.
I grew up on the Indian reservation here in Idaho on the Fort Hall Indian Reservation, and my dad was a police officer. So because he grew up there on the reservation, they would call him out as a liaison officer whenever they had some unusual calls or unusual activities. So when I was 4, the first time I remember one is when I was 4. My dad was called out because a Bigfoot was shaking apart this trailer, was really angry. And the people waited till the Bigfoot left, and then they went down to the police station and they sent out some people. And by then the Bigfoot had destroyed the pump house and then gone on down the canal. So when they went out there, they found the Bigfoot, but it wasn't hurting anybody, so they left it alone. And this happened when I was 4, so I saw the place where it happened, but you're 4. What's a Bigfoot? So it was years later when I started. I mean, you hear a lot of stories when you're on the reservation. You hear a lot of stories about the Bigfoot and things that happened, and I just started writing them down because I was curious. Most of them, and I kind of ignored the ones where people were too inebriated to tell a decent story. Mm-hmm. And just kind of started doing that. I found my first footprint. Well, I didn't even find it. I was shown my first footprint when I was about 15.
Okay. And you were still on the reservation, or where was that? We
were actually up in a different area and lived really, really rural. So our closest neighbor was about 2.5, 3 miles away. And they found the footprint outside their area out in the lava rock. And we actually found 2.5 footprints. So they told me about it, and I went down with my little brother. So I am 6'6". My feet are 12 inches long. My little brother is 6'8", and his feet are longer than mine. Okay. So he was with me, and we went down and we saw these 2.5 footprints. And they were roughly 6 feet apart, and you could see 2 clear footprints, a right and a left, and then a partial, where just the toes. It looked like it was running. Okay. But it was out there in the middle of the rock where no one runs.
But you could actually see. I know I'm one of those people that this is a Bigfoot print, and a lot of times I don't see it. I mean, I don't. People say, clear. But this was clean enough that you knew exactly what it was.
So the ground out there sets up like concrete, and we had rain 3 or 4 days before. Okay. So enough rain that there was mud, and the footprints were clear, and then they set up. So I mean, had I known what to do with casting material or whatever, and been able to take a picture, I could have done that. But I didn't. I was just curious. You know?
Okay. I know
Saw
with
these.
the invention of the telephone, and everybody has a telephone now. Everybody goes, we're taking pictures,
Yeah.
we're taking samples, we're taking this and that, and I know I have seen footprints that I was sure was one, and I've also seen other ones that were a little skeptical. So I'm glad you're able to say, yeah, it was something.
Yeah, these
that-
are definitely, they look like a barefoot footprint, and they were about 15, 16 inches long.
Okay.
So 3 or 4 inches longer than my feet. Very clear. You could see the toe and the pad, and like it was running, you know?
I know somebody had asked me today, how many Bigfoot, do you have any idea of how many Bigfoot are here in the United States, here in the world, anything like that?
I don't know, and I think that there's a lot of them that we never see. The Indians say that they live in family groups and in tribes.
Mm-hmm.
If that is the case, then there's probably more than we've seen. Here in Idaho, when I first started writing the books, I was thinking, well, Bigfoot are in Idaho too, but most of the time, even then, you'd hear about in Oregon or Washington or whatever, where there's more, greenery, I guess. But here in Idaho, we see them on the flat and in the sage and in the mountain too.
Yeah, there's no, maybe not the desert, we can maybe rule that out, but I know there have been sightings literally everywhere.
Yeah.
Pacific Northwest, here in Idaho, Colorado, where my sighting was, Montana, Wyoming, Oregon, and it just seems like they gravitate to a lot of the Indian reservations. We're hearing all the time about these sightings on the Indian reservations, and I for one believe that the Indian have a spiritual, more so connection to the Bigfoot than we do. And
Most of the time, it's just, I think that they are more aware of their world than we are. I mean, most people are so tied to their cell phones or whatever that, the weatherman tells them, oh, it's going to rain today.
Yeah.
Whereas it used to be, even when we were kids or whatever, you're like, I think it's going to rain today. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But that's kind of the relationship the Indians have, because they're more aware of even the simplest things than we are.
No, I think they are more in tune with the earth, as a lot of people are. Not really me as much. I know this is fascinating for me, and I try to digest all I can. And with me being on this 2-month trip, I have a lot of places that I want to study, and places that I want to go to, and people I'm going to interview and things like that. So I'm excited about that. What do you think? You've interviewed these 100+ people. What direct correlation do you see from all of these many individuals that you've spoken to? Is there something that they share? Is there something that they do or see or behave, or who they are, or what they've done? You and I were talking about this town where we're at. I don't want to give the name of where we're at, but let me try to describe. There's hills all around us. There's water sources. We have cows, and then we're at the base of these mountains, and we go up to these mountains, and you can see all the pine trees, and they're real dense, but there seems to be food sources here, and that's the one thing I saw. And what was unusual was I got here a few hours earlier than Becky was showing up, and I was really trying to look what I would thought where Bigfoot would be hiding or living or any of this. And I drove up into the mountains about 15 miles away from where we're supposed to meet, and I went down a road, and I said, I'm getting this feeling that this is the perfect location where I thought it would be. And lo and behold, when she took me out We went to that
Same
exact
place.
location. I didn't tell her or anything. I described it, what was there, 2 different padlocks on the gate there, and we went there. And this is one of the places where she had one of her experiences. Can you tell us about that place? Because I'm going to be sleeping there tonight with the dog. So I want to know.
Eaten.
Yeah, no, I'll be calling her in the middle of the night crying, come get me, send the cavalry.
What you'd ask if there was one similarity. Of all of these people that I've interviewed, one thing that this is my own personal theory. I have nothing to back it out. This is just me saying that the majority of the people that I find who've had Bigfoot sightings have also had a near-death experience, at least one.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, me too.
It just seems like when something that traumatic happens to them, it changes them. And they are more aware of different dimensions. Let's put it that way.
Was this was a sighting before their near-death experience or after? I know with mine, I was younger, I had the sighting, and then years later, I had a really bad bout with cancer. And luckily I'm here.
Yeah.
Did you ever follow up?
Most of the people that I've interviewed with, this kind of just became a thing when I started. I would sit and I'd interview somebody, and then I'd just sit and talk with them and say, what other amazing things have you done in your life? And a lot of them would bring up the fact that, hey, I survived this really amazing thing. And I got to wondering, maybe that's the tie. Maybe that's the thing that's allowing people. But the thing is, a lot of people go through a near-death experience and they don't remember it because it's so traumatic. Mm-hmm. And it's not until later time that they go back and they think, oh my gosh, this happened. I remember this happening. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I have based that on. Just it may not hold true for everything. It just seems like there's a strong correlation in my mind.
No, I can see that with a lot of people I've spoken to that have had tragic occurrences. A child die, a spouse die.
You'll have to ask that now from now on.
Yeah, and they're at a low point. They're in a low point of their life.
Yeah. And
this appears, and whether it makes them feel better or shows them that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So, we hear these different stories that they're harmful or they'll attack you or they kidnap.
I've never had that experience. Every experience that I've had with them has been positive. Mm-hmm. There hasn't been anything that's scary. And from what I've understood from interviewing a lot of people and a lot of Native people is that they will respond to you the way you approach them. So it's like one of my friends said, why do you go to a haunted house? To be scared. Mm-hmm. So if you go into the woods with the intent that I'm going to be scared, you're going to be scared. Something's going to scare the pants off you.
One way or another. And
it could just be a squirrel, for Pete's sakes, But if you go into the woods with pure intent and hope for more information, there's a chance that you might just have some. Yeah. And the times that I've seen it hasn't. In fact, I can't even really think of any time when I actually went in purposely and had an experience. It was more like I'm there, I'm existing, and there they are too.
When it's the right time, it's the right time. That's how I feel. And I know I'm going to be going up there to that spot tonight in camp. And I don't know, I'll say out loud, I'm not here to hurt you. I come as a friend. I'm going to leave some apples up there on the hood of my car and see what happens. We can't really ask for more than that. If they choose to show themselves, they will. I'm going to try to go with an open mind and an open heart and tell them that when I get there. And you had told us another experience about, we went up a road today, a forest road, and the Forestry Service had shut it down with a gate now. But you were telling me about that story when you went up with some friends. Can you tell us that again?
So there were 7 of us humans, and we were having a picnic. It was roughly 3:00 in the afternoon, and
what time of year was it?
Almost the same time as now. It was actually about June 22nd ish. So we went up and we were having a picnic, and my one friend had brought her drum, and she was drumming, and we were singing and enjoying it. We were right there by that stream. It's really beautiful, beautiful green, and my friend walked further up the stream, and all of a sudden she turns and she says, "There's 1, there's 2, and there's 3." And the one was standing nearer to her than us, so it was about 22, 25 feet away. And like I described to you, you could see part of its arm, the chest, the majority more of this arm and its face. And all I can say is it was massive. I don't know how big it was because I wasn't standing close enough to measure it against anything. The rest of it was surrounded by foliage and greenery.
And you were able to clearly see the face.
And that one tended to look kind of like a gorilla human cross. They're all different. They're all human. They're like us humans. Everyone's face is different, So that one looked that way, but the other 2. And that one, if I had to guess, it was older. It was 50, 60. I don't know. I don't know how old they aged to, but the other 2 looked more like teenagers, all elbows and knees, and they were hiding behind some bushes, and they just kind of peek out, and you'd see the elbows and the knees and everything would kind of show, and then you'd pop back in, and then they'd pop back out again. And their faces look different, like more like a teenager with not much hair on it. So we saw them, and we were only like 20, 25 feet away.
Okay.
In midday, and everyone in the group saw them, and they were there for a couple of seconds, just clear as can be, and then they weren't there anymore.
They just disappeared.
They were just disappeared, and the one fellow with us made the comment that if we could see those 3, there was likely to be more around us that we couldn't see. They were aware of us.
Yeah, they're masters of camouflage. And I mean, I believe that there's more. What you see, there's more out there watching you.
Yeah.
We talked about the familiar units, the family units, and how they travel, and I think that's I think that's true. I think that's what happened, and people that have problems with them are out hunting or something, and they scare them, they startle them, they're somewhere they shouldn't be. They believe that they're putting their family unit in danger, and that's why they attack.
I know the Bigfoot are very, very curious. So usually when I go camping with my kids, we read books. And so the very first time I actually ever saw one, we were reading. We were reading late at night, and I was reading my way through a series of books that were really entertaining. So the kids, I'd get to the end of a chapter, and the kids were like, "Oh, Mom, just a little bit more." So it was about midnight, and my voice was cracking. And I said, "Go to bed. Everybody go to bed." And it was just as I was just barely drifting off when I heard something in the campsite, and I thought, "Oh, Becky, that was so stupid. You left the vegetable peels out, and there's bear, and there's moose right there. We've had moose in our camp." And I thought, that was so stupid. So I carefully unzipped the bottom of the tent, and I peek out, and there's this being. And at the time, so one thing that I explain to people is the very first time you see a Bigfoot, if you're not expecting a Bigfoot, your mind doesn't know how to classify it. So what I saw was, it was bent down beside the end of our picnic table where I'd left the vegetable scraps. And it was squatting, and had one hand down, and it was brown with a strip of silver-ish down his back. Okay. And it might have just been the moonlight hitting that portion of his body. I don't know, but you could see the strip. And my mind is thinking, it ain't a badger. It ain't a skunk. I don't know what it is. So what I said is, what are you doing out there? And I look at that even now and I just think, what the heck were you doing? Oh man. But it put its hand down and just started to run like a football player does.
Oh,
you know,
so
where they
on four?
balance just on one hand and then they just rock forward and they run.
So they say sometimes they run like the crab, like on all fours. Have you?
This one, it didn't. It had its hand
raised
down.
itself?
It had its hand down and then just kind of rocked forward, and literally just took 2 running steps and was outside the clearing for the table. But my mind was like, what the heck was that?
Did you hear howlings later on? Nothing.
Nothing.
Have you heard howlings in the past?
Not so much howling as far as, I know that they mimic things. I've heard them mimic things.
Okay. I think I've heard that too.
Yeah, where you're just like, that is gotta be the ugliest coyote you've ever heard. But that I saw that, and see, that was in 2000. It was in 2000 when I saw that very first one, and my mind completely just kind of stuck that on a shelf, like didn't even think about it until later, a couple of years, when I actually had the experience where I realized, hey, these are the Bigfoot. And hey, wait a minute, I remember this. And I pulled it out and looked at it, and the more I've looked at it, I've thought, you know what, I bet you anything they were sitting there listening to those stories too. Because from all of the indications from all of these people that I've interviewed, those Bigfoot do understand our language. They have their own language, but they do, to some extent, understand part of our languages.
Okay. I know you say the language I have heard in the jungle, in the mountains, in the middle of nowhere, that gibberish talk, where it's like,
you swear it's something you understand, almost.
It's
listen,
very
you just
close.
Think, okay, you can catch the consonant sounds, you can catch the hard sounds, and you just think, what are you saying?
What
if
is
it was
it
a
they're
friend,
saying?
you would say, repeat that, I can't quite understand you. But it's not our language. It's not our language.
Yeah, it's not. It's something. I mean, when I've heard that, I've literally... what I usually do is I have a bright flashlight inside the tent, and I'm basically pointing it all over, and I'm like, get away from here now, get away from here now. That's what I usually say. I'm so scared to open up the tent and look out there. I'm like, I'll be cowering in the fetal position. I mean, I hear this stuff, and we've had instances where rocks have been thrown at us. I've had small trees like this that have been pulled out of the ground and thrown at us. And it's scary.
Maybe
I mean,
they don't like those apples you're giving them.
Maybe I have to infuse the apples with something, but it is, when you're in the middle of nowhere and you're literally by yourself, or you've got another buddy that's in the tent next to you, or he's next to you and he's sound asleep and you're shaking him. Did you hear that? What? Did you hear that? And then about 4 seconds later, bam, what was that? What was that noise? I'm like, told you there's something out there. And then we're like looking at one another, and we've got a flashlight, and we're looking at one another, and it's like, you go out. No. You open it. Oh, no. And we're just like...
I interviewed a fellow just who was camping, that way from us. And he and his buddies were in for the night after going elk hunting. And he said they were all, they were inside the tent. They had some light, but it was kind of stormy outside. And he said they heard something in the camp. And he said it didn't trip on any of the guy wires of the tent, which was kind of eerie. And then he said then they felt something brush against its whole body, brushed against the tent. And then he said then something with hands reached down through the tent and grabbed his leg.
Really?
Through the tent. And that's the part where he lost it.
Oh my God, I would freak out.
He said they loaded up in the pickup. They drove over the mountain and they camped on the side of the road in the pickup.
Oh, I'm
and
sure.
Then the next day they came out
if
and
something
camped.
like that happened, I don't know. I really don't know what I would do. I mean, Yeah, I mean, especially if you're in the middle of nowhere, and one of the nights we had an issue, we were in the middle of nowhere where we four-wheel drove in, and we weren't.
We're going to tell you so many scary stories you won't be afraid to sleep tonight.
Oh, I know. Whatever.
I had another
Take an Ambien, I'm gone.
I had another one like that was like that, where the guy said they were going out to, I don't know if it was hunting season yet, but they were out to check out the lay of the land, and they had a little, they had a square tent that had a little campfire stove in there because it was getting cold. And he said in the middle of the night, something picked up the tent and looked in and put it down. And he said that one was crazy. And I said, I can just see it now. He's in there checking the stew. Is the stew done, honey?
I mean, I don't. I'm sleeping in a truck tonight with the rooftop tent, and I know a friend of mine told me his experience where they were in the Mogollon Rim, and he was in a van, and it started shaking at night, and he looked through the windshield, and there was a Bigfoot right there. And I know this guy. We traveled together, so I believe what he said. And it's weird. You go out now, and people are like, for whatever reason, they see a shirt that I have Bigfoot on, and they start talking to you about it. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it was a stigmata. People didn't
There's
want.
something
They
wrong
thought
with you.
you were crazy.
Yeah.
And now
wrong with you.
I go to places, and they start talking to me and says, "Yeah, my cousin saw it, or my brother saw it." So I think more people are seeing it or experiencing it, but now they're not scared for fear of retribution, losing their job, being made fun of. It's the same thing with the UFOs. Now it's starting to become more commonplace where people are actually saying, "Yeah, this occurred to me."
There's a lot of people that I talk to that I am literally the first person they have told outside their family, and I feel that is a very special responsibility for me to tell their story the way to respect it, because it's a really incredible thing. It's not something that everybody gets to experience.
You can't take it lightly. I mean, they're entrusting you with a life-changing story. You were telling me the story of the hunters that were up in the mountains that with the elk. If that was a great story, if you want to tell them.
It was a cool story. So there were seven Indians out hunting and watching the elk come down over the hill and waiting for the buck so they could get it. And they were all on their stomachs watching through scopes, and they saw the herd of elk come over, and then the bull elk came down, and it came even with a rock, and it put its head down and kind of went behind it, and it flipped something over its shoulder, and it was a Bigfoot. So then they had this big wrestling match back and forth, and eventually the Bigfoot grabbed its horns by the left hand and reached over and disemboweled the elk and just laid it out there. And from what the guy said, he said it took a couple of moments, and then it stood up and it just ripped off the hindquarters off of this elk and put it over its shoulder, and off it went over the hill. And so after a while, they went up and harvested the pelt and took some more of the meat. But he said there were bite marks all over the neck and on the ears of this elk that looked like human, with a full set of mouth. And I just thought, that is cool. It's very cool.
And I'm going out and spending for the next 2 months in the middle of nowhere camping.
Now your wife's gonna have to check you for hickeys.
Yeah, my wife is coming too some of these nights. We'll see how long that lasts. But we go through this, and a lot of the people that we meet, they're fearful of telling people about this story, and it's almost like a relief once they start telling.
Yeah.
And you don't realize how many people have actually had experiences. You living in LA, you're not going to have an experience. You know what I mean? You're in San Francisco, you're really not going to see anything. It's these people that go out of the beaten path, and they're up in these mountains of the Mogollon Rim, the Rocky Mountains. We have people I talk to that are in Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Florida, all over. And I think a lot of it has to do with it's not a very populated location. I think we can agree with that. It's more of a quiet location. And you had told me that, or even showed me, where this occurred across the street from where you lived, and in the backyard, your son and you would have footprints along the back on the grass, very, very large footprints in the mud. And then it was one day you looked across the street at the neighbor's house, and he was hiding behind a tree that was in front of the neighbor. She showed me it. And it's sort of unnerving. We're not in a densely populated area, but there are houses around here. So at night, it's getting dark. There's not a lot of lights out here. So they come at night, and I think they walk through the neighborhoods, whether they're looking for food or
it surprised me
curiosity.
More people haven't seen him, but then, maybe they're just not looking. And I interviewed one guy who was a special operations soldier, and he said, his trainer always said that if the right person just stands still, you can't see him. And he said, I didn't believe him, but they showed us in training. People just stand perfectly still, you can't see him.
No, because the eye reacts
right past him.
Yeah, the eye reacts in such a way, and I know in my training too, where if I see something flicker or move, my eye is going to be automatically drawn to that. Yeah. But you're laying on the ground, you're hiding in a bush, you're hiding behind a tree, you're not going to see them. I mean, it happens all the time. You're not going to see these people. Yeah. And it just, I'm excited about what's going on and what we're seeing. And hopefully the dog lets me know. The other night he was growling. We were up on the Stanley Salmon River by Stanley, Idaho, and that night we put a tent out, so we were sleeping on the ground instead of the rooftop tent, and he just started growling, and he makes this weird, he's not a barky dog, but he makes this weird, and then I'm like, and of course flashlight came out, get away, and we didn't have any more problems for the rest of the night. But I know on this trip I have some new things I'm trying that I sort of let you know. There's resonance imaging that is at a specific frequency that's not able to be heard with the human ear. So my cousin, who's a producer and knows, works for somebody big, he's really good with this stuff, and he's making me some different frequencies that we're going to try. We're also going to try, people have suggested babies crying, so I'm going to do some different frequencies.
To me, that would be eerie.
I know, but the baby's crying, and they're very curious. They're very, very curious. And I know I brought a flute to play, and I brought some other things to play. Hopefully with their curiosity level, maybe it'll bring them in. Put out the game cameras and see what's going on. The problem is, I believe they have the ability to see ultraviolet light. So the game cameras really don't work, and what's been recommended some old time cameras with tripwires, but I don't even know if that would work. It doesn't mean it's not going to. It's willing to. I'm willing to try. At this point, you know what? You try almost anything. I know with leaving the food out, and you told us a story about a melon, a big melon you left out. They love melons. We're going to do some apples tonight, see what happens. I haven't had a chance to buy the peanut butter. People have told me they love peanut butter too. Yep. And because of their dexterity in their fingers, you can literally leave a whole can of peanut butter there, screw the top on, and they'll basically get into the jar of peanut butter, clean it thoroughly, and leave it back there with the top screwed on, and the
Yep.
bear don't have that ability.
And sometimes they'll cross screw it just because that's an interesting thing for them. Doesn't work the same way.
And they say the gifts and things like that. I think with that and the curiosity and a mirror or something flashy, it can't. I mean, enough people have said, yeah,
Ribbons work sometimes too. Just
Well,
ribbons
ribbons?
and leather and
okay.
things that you can trade them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like ribbons and leather work really well.
And a bowl. There was somebody I spoke to, a hatchet, where they took a hatchet.
That might be interesting.
Well, yeah, they literally took a hatchet. This was in Oklahoma, and he was yelling at his son and saying, "Why'd you take the hatchet? I didn't use it, Dad. I didn't use it. I didn't use it." And 6 months later, the hatchet was returned into his barn, stuck into a log. And he says he's had little things like that are gone. There's another guy I spoke to that they literally go and he leaves his door unlocked, and they go into his property, and he leaves them these taffies, saltwater taffies. They know where to go into his drawer. They take the taffies out, and then they're gone. I know. I mean, that would scare the heck out of me if it was
Popcorn was a big
Popcorn?
one that they mentioned was butter popcorn.
Okay.
They actually had a Bigfoot come in their house to get buttered popcorn, but they said the door was open. It was a hot night, and they didn't have air conditioning. They were just letting the breeze go through and left the door open. And someone went through the kitchen, and they assumed it was someone else they were waiting for to start a movie, and it wasn't.
I mean, I don't. I mean, you sit there and you're like, where do you put it? Am I going to put it on the hood of my car? And I've had people say, put flour all around, so if he puts his hands or something down. I mean, it sounds great. At this
That'd be
point,
interesting.
there's other people that have told me put sand around the
Sand
bowl,
around it.
so when there will be a disturbance of some sort. I mean, like you, we've heard probably a million different things and try this and do this. And the nice thing is you've really reached out to these people, and your wealth of knowledge has come from talking to these 100+ people. And I really value that, and we've talked about different things, and I've thrown some ideas off your head, and you've told me what you thought about it, whether it was good, whether it was crazy. Keep the alcohol away from the Bigfoot.
Yeah, don't give them alcohol.
Yeah,
Not
well,
a good idea.
see, we started talking about that. Do not give them alcohol. I'm not even going to have that near us. But
no, that's why even food gifts are okay, but don't get an idea that you need to keep feeding them because they will then become dependent.
Yeah.
It's like putting bird food in a bird feeder. After a while, you get some really aggressive birds.
I mean, if they're coming one night, they take food. I may stay there another night, but that's probably going to be about the extent of that area to sleep in. But I'm trying to go and see if I see anything. I've got some recording things. If I hear howls or hoots, who knows? And we'll send them off and have them analyzed. Maybe I'll find some giant poop. This is something I've wanted to do since 1985, and I'm finally at a point in my life that I can do this. I can take a few months off and travel and hit these different states, and I'm really looking forward to talking to people like yourself who have some ideas. And people, if you're in Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, where else am I going? Washington, Oregon, reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to talk to you, and I think if it's something good, I'd come down to your location or where you think they are, either camp with you, camp by myself, and let's see what we can find. But I really thank you for your time. Tell them how they can find the books and your website and all that.
The website is kind of down right now, but
Okay.
the books can be found on Amazon, and they're just Bigfoot Lives in Idaho. Bigfoot lives in Idaho. Bigfoot still lives in Idaho. Bigfoot lives everywhere in Idaho. Just under Becky Cook.
Okay. Yeah, but if you want information about Bigfoot here in Idaho as well as the other states, specifically Idaho, this is the person to reach out to. Okay, we'll be doing more fun stuff, so just keep an eye out, and we'll see you on the trail. And follow us at Life of an Adventurer on Facebook, or Life_of_adventure on Instagram. All right, guys. Good night.